Hi there, I'm Lizzie. I was diagnosed as autistic earlier this year, and here's 10 more reasons why I thought I was autistic. So, reason number one is awkward body language, and I'm sure a lot of autistic people can relate to this one. I've just always felt awkward in myself, and particularly in my childhood and teenage years, maybe my 20s as well. It's all been to varying degrees, really. I still feel quite awkward at times, but certainly I had a real issue with this in my younger years. For whatever reason, I am conjuring up some images in my mind of networking events in particular in my job life, and you'd always have these ridiculous kind of comfort breaks or whatever where you'd have to go off and network with other people, and I've just never been able to do it, and I just kind of stand around awkwardly in the sidelines. Perhaps I'd go and try and make myself a cup of tea or coffee, but I don't know, I felt like my body language was really giving away the fact that I was autistic. And also, T-Rex arms are a real thing I've learned about autistic people. And I remember I went to a birthday party in my early 20s, I think, and one of my friends had filmed some of the party, so we were looking back at some footage, and she noticed that I was kind of doing T-Rex arms for basically the whole party, and I've just never liked parties for one. And she said to me, "What on earth are you doing with your arms?" And I thought, I don't know what I'm doing with my arms, so I don't know how to explain this at all. And as well as autistic people, I've learned that some ADHD people find comfort in this arm position as well. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Number two is punctuality, and I've just always had this thing ingrained in me that not only do I have to turn up on time, I have to turn up early, and this has been kind of all consuming, really. And I only really noticed that I had a real thing about this when I met my partner Ian, because he's late for everything. So there was a bit of almost conflict there at times, that I'd feel this incessant need to turn up kind of early to things. So yeah, it's been evident throughout all of my life actually. I'd always turn up early to work. If I was commuting, I'd always have to catch, the earlier train or earlier bus than perhaps the average person would, because I'd be thinking of all the what ifs. What if it doesn't turn up? What if there's something that happens along the way and I arrive late? So I just have never been able to cope with that thought of arriving late somewhere. And yeah, I would say this is quite a significant autistic trait of mine. Number three is sensory issues in terms of touch. So I've talked about previously on my channel my light sensitivity and noise sensitivity, but I have a real kind of issue with touch as well. I really don't like being touched. Other than my partner, obviously, I find it really, yeah, difficult at times, and it's certainly been an issue actually in the workplace. For instance, I was working somewhere. It was a temporary position, and it was quite a big office. And one of the people that worked there, he was a chap, came over while we were having a little bit of a meeting within the workspace, and without asking, he started to vigorously massage my shoulders, and I just went nuts about it. I thoroughly embarrassed him, I think, in front of the whole room, because I was just like, "What do you think you're doing? Can you just stop that?" And I noticed actually a few people's kind of heads went down because they were quite embarrassed, but I just thought, I don't care. I don't want you touching me. I don't think it's what anybody should be doing, certainly in the workplace. It was just such a shock, and that was my immediate response. He apologised in the moment, but there was another instance a few weeks later where he came in and he touched me on the shoulder, and there was nobody else in the room this time, but I just thought, I can't cope with this at all. And when he left the room, I burst into tears, and another senior member of staff came in shortly after that, and I said, you know what, you can stuff your job because I'm not putting up with this. So I just left because I find that kind of behaviour unacceptable, and it has happened in previous jobs as well. I have to say it is mainly men that have done it, but yeah, I had to put in a complaint about a member of staff elsewhere about this behaviour as well, and you know, I just can't stand it, and I think a lot of autistic people are the same. I just don't understand why somebody would touch somebody else without their consent. It's just, yeah, I don't understand. Also, I hate handshakes, and I have always done whatever I can to be able to get out of them. And the amount of times I've said to people, you know what, I've got a cold, so I won't shake your hand today, or, you know, something along those lines, because I just really try and avoid them where possible. And also, I struggle with sensory issues in terms of clothes. So yeah, there's various things that I've just never been able to wear really, such as flip-flops. I think they might be called thongs in the US, but they're basically kind of sandals that kind of come between your big toe and the next toe. I've just, oh gosh, never been able to get on with those, and even the thought kind of makes me cringe. That just, yeah, can't wear those at all. Also, I have a real thing with my neck, and I can't wear anything that's really tight around my neck. I can't stand being touched on my neck. It has got better as I've gotten older, because I used to really freak out about this when I was younger, but yeah, I've got issues around that. Weirdly, however, I can wear scarves, and I think it's because I know that I can remove them really easily, but the thought of wearing a polo neck, not for me. And also, I've yeah, not been able to wear high heels for years. I think the last time I wore them was my mid-20s, and it suddenly dawned on me that I really hated wearing them. So I, yeah, just have never worn them ever since. I also have real issues with itchy clothing and clothing tags, and I've never been able to wear wool at all. Number 5 is special interests, and I think this is probably one that a lot of autistic people can relate to. I've just found that I've had interests in my life that have been kind of all consuming, really, and certainly longer term ones have been arts and illustration, hence why I'm an artist. And music is another one. I'm passionate about a lot of bands and singer-songwriters, in particular REM and Neutral Milk Hotel. I think REM is my longest term special interest, though. I've always loved that band, as well as the Beatles, actually. And yeah, that gives you a flavour. Actually, I could talk about bands and music that I love for ages, but we'll perhaps save that for another video. And also, YouTube is absolutely a special interest of mine. I really enjoy making content. I've I had another channel, it's still going actually, called Clay Disarray for my artwork, and that one's been going for about 9 years. So once I was diagnosed as autistic, you know, it just made sense really for me to create content about this whole new kind of massive event in my life, you know, and yeah, I'm really enjoying it, I have to say. Reason number 6 is alexithymia. And alexithymia is basically a information processing difference. So a lot of autistic people don't actually recognise their emotions in the here and now. They may take some time to be able to, well, basically recognise what these emotions are and what they mean. So for instance, with any form of trauma, it's really common for autistic people to have a delayed sense of processing, and you know, that certainly relates to me. And I think this is one that I'll probably discuss in an individual video, really, because there's just so much to talk about with this one. But yeah, certainly this has been a big one for me. Number 7 is a real dislike of being overstimulated. So when we're talking about overstimulation, we can be talking about any number of things, can't we? And certainly a lot of things would relate to me. So I think for today, I'm just going to give you the examples of speed and travel. And yeah, anything that involves the two of those is a nightmare for me. And for instance, I absolutely despise roller coasters, and I just cannot get into my head why people would really enjoy them. I've been on maybe 3 roller coasters in my life, and I came away from them feeling just completely traumatized. I absolutely hated every moment of them. And I have similar responses in fast cars and fast public transport, buses and trains. You know, it really does distress me, and I'll do whatever I can to mitigate, you know, all these stresses that are going on. So I find music really helpful, but still it's something that I can do a million times over, I think, and I still just would not be able to get used to it. Number 8 is meltdowns, and meltdowns can look really different in each autistic person because, you know, we're all different. It may look like somebody's losing their temper, it may look like somebody's really upset about something, but meltdowns are basically when an autistic person is externally showing their distress or their discomforts. And while we're talking about travel, I remember a few years ago, well, more than a few years ago now, I was travelling with a boss just over to Dublin on a flight, and needless to say, I hate flying. And for whatever reason, I was really freaking out about it that day. I just didn't want to fly, but obviously I had to. So we got onto the flight, and as soon as we took off, I immediately started freaking out, and I now know it was a meltdown. And I just kept saying stuff like, you know what, I think we're all going to die on this flight, and the plane's going to crash. And my boss, thankfully, was really sympathetic. She knew that I had a fear of flying, but I didn't notice at the time because I was freaking out too much. But she said everybody's faces around us was like just full of horror. They were all worried that the plane was going to crash. But yeah, that's just one example of one of my meltdowns, and I think certainly this is another theme that's deserving of its own video at some point. So yeah, that's just one example for today. Number 9 is having difficulties dealing with criticism. And if you know anything about being an artist, it involves dealing with criticism all the time. If you're publishing work on social media or other websites, of course it's going to attract conversations, both negative and positive, and invariably it's the negative comments that I'll always remember. And I think this is really common for autistic people. And even soft critique can cause me anxiety. Like, for instance, Ian, my partner, is brilliant for sharing ideas and helping me really work through ideas, etc. He doesn't work in the creative field, but he's certainly an artist in his soul. But whenever he's tried to give me advice on work that I've already done or ideas that I've had that don't align with what I've got going on in my head at that moment, I found it really quite difficult. And we've learned how to deal with this over the years, and the amount of times he said to me, Lizzie, I think this would be a really good idea, and I've said, nah, I don't think that would work at all, in a kinder way than that, hopefully. But Generally speaking, I'll always come round to his ideas. It might take me weeks or months to kind of come round to that idea. But yeah, we get there in the end. But I've learned how to deal with his critique and his criticism, and that has been really helpful actually in dealing with commissioners who I've had to work with in order to create artwork for them. So yeah, it's another interesting one. And reason number 10 is tiredness. And since my diagnosis, this is making so much sense. You know, I've, yeah, just always been a really tired person compared to my peers or my contemporaries. I've just never really understood why until now. Like, for instance, to give you an example, I had a friend years ago now, I'm talking way back into my 20s, and she absolutely loved shopping. And I've always been a bit indifferent to it. Every now and again, I would build myself up into thinking today has to be a shopping day because I need to go out and get clothes or, you know, whatever. And she loved shopping for clothes, and we'd have a day out shopping every now and again together. And her stamina for the whole session was, for me, unparalleled. I just couldn't believe where on earth she got her energy from. And this was at a time where I walked everywhere. You know, I certainly wasn't unfit. And she generally drove everywhere. So it just got me thinking, why is it that I'm a relatively fit person, but I am absolutely pooped by lunchtime, and this girl can go shopping till tonight if she wants to? I would just feel physically exhausted, and certainly by the mid-afternoon, every bone in my body would be aching. And after a shopping day like this, it would take me, you know, a full day to get over it, and I just couldn't understand why. But obviously now that I know I'm autistic, this was sensory overload. You know, there was so much going on. It's not actually just the shopping itself, it's the environments, having to negotiate with other people. There's lights, noises, and all sorts of stuff. And that's a hell of a lot of information for an autistic brain to kind of take on board, really. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense now, I have to say. So I think that's where I'm going to leave my list for today. I have got loads of items on this list, so I'll no doubt make another video at some point. But this is video number 2, so I'll link down below to video number 1 on 10 reasons why I thought I was autistic, and I don't doubt there'll be a part 3 at some point. So I would love to know if you can relate to any of these traits given today or any of these reasons. And yeah, if you can't relate to them as well, I think it just really evidences how we're all different as autistic people. And, you know, that saying comes to mind here: if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, because we're all so different, aren't we? So yeah, let me know down below if you can relate. I'll be back soon with another video, and thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and give it a like if you got this far, and I'll see you again soon.